Hello everybody and welcome, where today I'm going to talk about the latest meta report that's been published over on Wartally. We're going to be talking about the win-loss statistics. We're going to be talking about some of the different warbands, what they like to take, why they're taking them, and also give you guys at home an idea of what's performing at the moment on the Warcry tournament scene, what to look out for, and I don't want to say what to avoid, but you might get some interesting ideas for some warbands that you might want to take to really flex on your opponents. Before we get into the report, as always, if you like what you see and you want to see more of this kind of thing, please do not forget to like and subscribe. It helps me out, helps me see numbers going up, and it's absolutely free to you. Alternatively, if you want to give me some more support, you can join me here on YouTube as a member. You can join me over on Patreon. You can join me over on Streamlabs. Either way, you'll get to see videos before they come out. You will get to see behind the scenes content and maybe even have a little bit of a say into the kind of videos that I produce in the future. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. So, Wartally, before we get into this, I want to quickly talk about it. It's really a passion project of one of the members of the Warcry Discord who goes by the name of Trolls. It's basically a way for tournament organizers and event organizers to run their Warcry events. It's got all of the scoring system built in. It's got all of the strength of schedule calculations built in. If you wanted to run a Warcry event yourself, it's really easy. You can give people access to the front end. They'll be able to upload their lists. It will automatically sort people depending on their wins, losses, and draws. And then after that, you'll be able to pull out statistics based on how the players did, what they did, and see everything that you would want to see about that tournament. It's really an invaluable tool for the community. It's way better than BCP because it's been designed from the ground up specifically for Warcry. And yeah, I recommend it to anybody. Support the creator, go check it out. It's fantastic. It's a great tool. Right, so here it is. This is the kind of thing that you are used to seeing coming out of Games Workshop. It's basically the win rates of every single one of the warbands that have taken place. So this information that you're seeing here is based on every single competitive match that's happened between April and end of June 2024. So that's 26 tournaments, 371 rosters that have been submitted, and 691 actual battles that have been recorded, which is really good. We are seeing a quarter-on-quarter increase in the amount of events happening, the amount of games played, the amount of people entering. So that's awesome. That's a great statistic that we want to see. It just shows that Warcry keeps on growing. This isn't even the exhaustive list. There are other events that are going on outside of Wartally, being organized on things like BCP, maybe even Games Workshop's in-house Warcry app that does also allow you to organize events. So yeah, that's really good. It's really encouraging, and we're seeing growth month on month. But what are we actually seeing here? This is a very familiar sight for you guys if you've seen any kind of meta watch before, be it 40k, Kill Team, Age of Sigmar. This is the win percentages of every single warband that has entered any of those events. I've trimmed it down a little bit here because I wanted to exclude those warbands that simply haven't played enough games. I'm no statistician, so I've basically said that if a warband has not played at least 1% of the total games, it's not going to show up here. There are 50 warbands. There's a lot of data. This list will be huge. So I've got rid of those just for ease of reading. And then we've got the green bar in the middle, which gives Games Workshop's ever so handy 45 to 55% win rate, which is where we want to see different warbands and where we want to see them sitting. One other thing I do want to talk about that a whole bunch of this data has come from the tabletop simulator leagues that are running monthly over on the Discord. If you want to play in those, you can go check that out. So we're talking about competitive casual leagues and everything else besides. But let's get into talking the big, let's say, winners and the big losers for this month. So right at the top, we're sitting there with over a 75% win rate. Head Knights of Slaanesh Cyberites. It's the red bar that we're looking at. That's going to be our win rate. The orange bar is the amount of tournament entries for that particular warband. This is just to give you guys a rough idea on how popular these kinds of warbands are. So Cyberites, they're okay. We're talking about, what, 30, 35 entries over the last 3 months with a 75% win rate. That's pretty interesting for us. There is a lot of good stuff going on in Cyberites. So that'd be interesting to see some of those warbands. We're going to check out some lists a little bit later on for some of these top performing warbands to see exactly what makes them tick. It is worth noting also that this data is for all events that have happened after the new update has come in. So we should be able to see some of those more mid-rangey warbands closing to the top. And that's definitely something that Head Knights of Slaanesh can do. Similarly, second place, we've got Horns of Hushut. They've always been good. they seem extremely popular. They are the third or fourth most popular warband in competitive play. They're doing very well, again, above the 55% win rate mark. So perhaps that's something that Games Workshop wants to look into for their next balance update. I think personally that Flame Hurlers should be a little bit more expensive, so maybe that's something that they will do at some point in the future. And then we go down the line, Magickin of Nurgle Demons, Royal Beast Flayers. They've been tested a lot in the competitive leagues recently, and to top all that off, we've had Andy's very recent win at Warhammer World with Royal Beast Flayers, so it's really good to see them doing well, especially considering that early on, when they were released, they seemed to be an extremely difficult warband to play, very glass cannon, and you didn't see people getting nearly as good as results as people have been getting now that they've been released for a while and they've got the support in place. Going down to the bottom, we've got things like Untamed Beasts. Again, True Blades, they continue to struggle. They have been struggling basically since they were released. I don't know how many people have decided to take them on after the last balance update has gone in, but I really do think that they need help. They are still on the expensive side. They are still on the relatively squishy side for the points that you're paying and the amount of damage that they are doing. Sylvaneth, I am surprised to see down there because they regularly, at Warhammer World at least, put on a really good showing, and they have some very strong Colonel Hunter builds, so it'd be interesting to see exactly what they are doing. And similarly with Questor Soulsworn, we saw, I think not in the last event, but the event before that, Questors were doing really good things before the FAQ update went in, and you would expect after the update that they would rise up the rankings a little bit more. That doesn't seem to be the case. Perhaps it's a factor of they're just a one-box warband that people pick up and they go, they play their event. So we don't know if that's down to new players going into events with them or if that's down to any serious mechanical issues with the warband. Personally, I always thought they were fine. In the middle of the pack, I think it's really encouraging to see the Yildrim Riverblades. A bit like Royal Beast Flayers, they were kind of panned when they were released. People said that they weren't that good. They were very squishy, not doing all that much. But it's nice to see them with at least a solid enough win rate, despite the relatively low amount of entries. I hope those people who have brought Riverblades and are succeeding with them will carry on to take them, really nail down their playstyle, and go from success to success. Okay, I am here in Wartally directly. If you want to see the meta report yourself, you can go in here, wartally.com, go to the meta report, and this will give you the latest information. You can find out historical reports, you can download the raw data for yourself. As we've already talked about, here are the top 10 factions by win rate. So we're talking about Head Knights of Slaanesh, Cyberites, Daughters of Cain, Bone Splitters. Bone Splitters having a really good showing, considering how popular they basically aren't. They don't actually show up on my details because I have filtered them out. So that's real interesting to see how Bone Splitters are doing. Darkling Covens, I believe, are doing pretty well thanks to the proliferation of 55-point chaff units. That's very good for them. And they also have decently priced fast units that they can complement with basically any hero in the order list. And then we go down, Cities of Sigmar, Magickin, Splintered Fang, etc. Going into the 10 most popular factions, still right at the top, Soulblight Gravelords. Their win rate has gone down since last time. That's probably a direct factor of the last FAQ kind of hitting their basic Graveguard and skeletons and that kind of thing, but their popularity basically hasn't changed. So they're popular as ever, it's just they are not as good as they used to be, which is exactly what we wanted to see from one of the very top warbands. Vulcan Flameseekers are extremely popular despite a 45% win rate, but 45% is fine, that's okay. A very interesting metric that you can pull out of this report are the most popular allies per Grand Alliance. So we look at all of the lists and we see what is the most common recurring allies. For order, absolutely no surprises here. Errant Questor with Grandhammer, we are bringing that specifically for the double that gives a free move to basically anything within 6 inches. Kalthi Zandire, always been good. Her popularity basically hasn't moved. She's been taken as much as she used to. And Haskell Hexbane. The reason for Haskell Hexbane is because with Haskell, you can take POC and you can shoot things, and it's a very good support piece for pretty much any warband that you want to have. Looking at death, we've got the Wielder of the Blade, the Briar Queen, and the Askagan Exemplar. Wielder and the Briar Queen, I kind of understand. They do similar things, but in different ways. The Wielder, you give it +1 attack, and then it can find, and then it can go in there, it can smash face, it's got the free move built in, it's got the disengage reduction built in, and it can do a whole bunch of damage, especially with the new FAQ that has gone in saying that it can also use Frightful Touch, which basically makes it a 3-5-6-6 damage profile. Amazing, amazing. Similarly with the Briar Queen, you're going to be doing it in a slightly different way. The Briar Queen has the excellent Howling Vortex triple that allows it to do a whole bunch of damage to a single target and has control built in there, because if any of the Howling Vortex dice hit, you're going to be stripping movement from that thing. Third place, the Askigan Exemplar, which I kind of find interesting because if you wanted to compare it directly to the Wielder of the Blade, the Wielder's the same price. In fact, it's 5 points cheaper, and it does statistically more damage with better abilities. It does have the Resurrect in there also because it is Nighthorn. Destruction, we are looking at the Brugit, the Gutlord, Frostborn Mantrapper, all very good. We are seeing a reduction in the amount of Brugits being taken. This is a direct correlation to the increase in price that we've seen. I would expect the Clawback from the Gorger Moor Pack to jump on in here. It's become far more popular recently and is a very good replacement for something like the Gutlord, to have something quick that has projection and that can take out targets early on in the game. Frostborn Mantrapper, of course, is Frostborn Mantrapper. He'll shoot things, they'll die. He's pretty good. And finally, with Chaos, we have the ever-present Fulmoroid Crusher, a little bit less taken than it used to be, -3 instances since the last time this was done, which would have been for Q2. The Ogroid Myrmidon. Myrmidon's pretty good. It's comparable to the Fulmoroid Crusher, so if you have one or the other, it doesn't really matter. They'll both do the exact same thing for you. A little bit more popular, but the big winner here is Vexmore from Head Knights of Slaanesh. 13 instances of it being taken throughout the quarter, but one thing to remember is that it has just been released just before the FAQ went in, so it is still very, very new. I would expect it to overtake that Fulmoroid Crusher very quickly. It's still locked behind a Warhammer Underworld's big box, so as soon as that thing becomes available by itself, I expect us to see a lot of those running around. There are a couple of factions that I wanted to look at specifically, some from the top, some from the bottom, to see exactly what they were doing. Right at the top, we have Head of Knights for Slaanesh Cyberites. They were doing really, really well. You can see the opponent's size performance. So it's got very good win ratios of everything going all the way up to 10 fighters. But then that statistic jumps right off a cliff as soon as you get something a lot bigger. So those very big Soulblight Gravelord warbands, for example. So that's very interesting to see, especially considering that after the FAQ's gone in, a tendency to see smaller warbands, maybe 7, maybe 8-man warbands. That's where Slaanesh Cyberites seem to shine against that kind of size. And if we look at a sample list here, this is very classic, the Slaanesh good stuff list. So we're looking at Vexmore, we're looking at Slate Slash from the Dread Pageant, a whole bunch of Blissbrew Homunculus because they are 55-point chaff. They're not that good, but they're 55-point chaff, which is the important thing. And then after that, it's basically a mash together of whichever heroes that you want. Normally, you're going to play one of the other demons from the Thricefold. So in this case, we're talking about Vashtis, but Lassavir is also extremely popular. And then we're going to play a couple of other fighters, maybe from Slaanesh Cyberites themselves, or alternatively, because you're taking Slate Slash, you can take it out of the Dread Pageant. In this case, Rob has chosen Vassalak and Glisset. Let's take a quick look at Horns of Hashut. Again, one of the most popular and one of the best warbands out there. It's doing really well against these small units. That is mainly down to the proliferation of a pair of Flame Hurlers, because Flame Hurlers can literally look at an enemy fighter, do a whole bunch of damage, and really chug it down. Similarly, going up to, let's say, 8 fighters, because you can pick off those fighters, and because Shatterers, whilst they have got more expensive, it's not a completely insurmountable problem. Horns can still put together a very good warband. But as soon as we go 11 or more units, so those very big warbands, Horns start to suffer. Why? Because they cannot kill fighters quick enough in order to win those objective games, and they kind of get bogged down, and as soon as those demolishers go down, that's basically it. The famous Horns of Hashut lists were Varangard, Fulmoroid Crusher, a pair of Flamethrowers, and Shatterers, and we can see now that is still very much the case. We've got the Varangard, we've got the Shatterers, we've got the Flame Hurlers, we have everything in there that we would need. Sitting at the bottom end of the pile, I wanted to take a quick look at Sylvaneth. Now, I always thought the Sylvaneth were pretty good. I always thought that they had the tools to do what they wanted to do, especially with things like kind of hunters. They've got teleporting, they've got nets in faction. They kind of seem to have all of the tools needed to play competitive Warcry really well, and they never really came together to do that. But that being said, some of the better performing warbands are really leaning into those kind of hunters to get a lot more value out of that unit. We can see an example of that here with this particular list. We're talking about Calthea Xander to get extra moves and extra attacks on your kernel of hunters, and a whole bunch of Tree Revenants. Rune Lord, in this case, to get additional attacks off of your kernel of hunters. We've seen things like running Quest or Soulsworn in there to get the additional moves. I think at the moment, it is really a case of just running hunters and something. I wonder, with the release of the Codewrite recently, where you could do something like a much smaller Sylvaneth warband, play it almost like Quest or Soulsworn or one of the Stormcast warbands, much smaller, run your kernel of hunters, run Calthea in there, run the Codewrite so you can stop people from using their abilities once you've activated all of your stuff, and maybe try and win that way. But at the moment, it doesn't seem like Sylvaneth are really clicking, but I would be very interested to see them kind of do well and to try and do a little bit better going forward. Like I said, I really do think they have the tools to do it. Okay, that is it from me for today. Thank you very much for watching. That's been my very quick rundown on what's been happening globally on the Warcry competitive scene. You've seen all the win rates, you've seen all the most taken allies, and we've got a little bit into some of the top warbands to see what exactly makes them tick. As always, if you like what you see, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know down in the comments section below what you think about some of the top performing warbands. You can go check out Wartally yourself, and you can see the stats on any one of those factions, specifically what people are taking, how they're taking it, and some of the best builds for those factions. Let me know down in the comments what you think. If you've got any interesting builds that you've been doing particularly well with, I'd love to hear that. But mostly overall, please, please, please show some real support for Trolls. He's doing an amazing, amazing job. But yes, that's it from me for today. As always, I've been Itan, this has been Off Meta Musings, and we'll see you next time.